Oh, hey guys, Mark Holmes here, and as always, I want to thank you guys for watching, commenting, and subscribing to the Joe Blue Sports Report. Without you guys, this literally doesn't work. Now, I promised you guys a couple days ago that I was going to do kind of a study or bring you some numbers and some facts about the Julio Jones situation, okay, as well as how that relates actually to a whole reset in the NFL. Let me turn down NFL Network here. See, I think what you have happening now is the evolution in the NFL. Teams are reevaluating the number one wide receiver. And I've told you guys before when we first were talking about whether or not we should keep Dez Bryant, I kept telling you that only one of the highest paid wide receivers in the NFL had a ring, Demaryius Thomas. Because the fact of the matter is, having a great number one wide receiver, a guy that's getting tons and tons of catches, does not translate into Super Bowl wins. Both of our Super Bowl teams, New England as well as the Eagles, both were led by the tight ends. And when you look at the salary cap, you only have X amount of money to spend, so you have to spend it wisely. So the question is, do you have a wide receiver that you're making $16 million a year? And what's interesting is a lot of people will say that, oh, well, your receiving core is young or your defensive backs are young, that, you need veteran guys. Well, you do in some positions. Some positions you learn more as you get older. But here's the interesting thing. When you look at Julio Jones, who is now 29 years of age, he's at that point where the numbers start going down. You're past the peak. And I know, Mark, you're a freaking idiot. What are you talking about? When we were having a discussion about Dez Bryant, when it was originally, does he get the big contract? What the data showed at that time was when Megatron signed his big deal, afterwards, his numbers went down. At that time, Larry Fitzgerald, when he signed his $100 million plus deal, his numbers went down. Although I will say this, that Larry Fitzgerald is the only one who ended up having his career best after this window. Because here's what I do. Like I said, I try and at least get something behind me when I give you something. I'm not just going to pull something out of my rear end. Doesn't mean that it's always going to be right or it's going to fit every situation. But you can see the tendencies and stuff on there. Because when you go through, let's say Michael Irvin. Here's the data. Here's the work. Michael Irvin's first year, 32 catches. Second year, 26, 20. 93 in his fourth year. 78, 88, 79. And by his eighth season, he had 111. After he hit that 111, 64, 75, 74, 110. Starts going downhill. Starts declining. 8-year. Dez Bryant, his best year was actually his fourth year. 93 catches. After that, 88, 31, 50, 69. Julio Jones, and here's where we're looking at, because Julio right now, is he underpaid for what the top wide receivers are? Yes. But are you paying for past performance, or are you paying for what you hope he's going to do? Because in his first 4 years, 54, 79, 41, 104. And then, of course, fifth year, 136. Incredible. But in that year, when he had that 136, they were third in their division. They were 7-9. 6th year, 83 catches. They're in the Super Bowl. Let me say that again. He had 136 catches, and they were 7-9. He had 83 catches, and they go to the Super Bowl. Last year, he had 88 and only 3 touchdown passes, and they're in the playoffs. Does that sound funny to you guys? It shouldn't, because what I told you before, all of the Antonio Browns, big numbers, fantastic plays, no rings. The Dez Bryant, throw up the X, no rings. Julio Jones, 136 catches, no rings. But you can go through and look at the peak year of the guy. So Calvin Johnson, his peak year was year 6 when he got the big deal. Then 84, 71, 88. T.O., his peak year 7. Drew Pearson, this is how crazy this is. Drew Pearson's best year was 58 catches in year 4. After that, the numbers went downhill. Randy Moss, year 5, 106. Year 6, 111. After that, 49, 60, 42, 98, 69, 83, and 28. So clearly there's a pattern. Now we'll go through where Reggie Wayne was one of the few that were different. Year 10, 111. And Larry Fitzgerald is the real one that's just outliered out there. He was year 12 with 109 was his peak. And Jerry Rice, of course, he played for 19 years. Year 11 was his peak at 122. So if we go through and we crunch these numbers and these averages, what it tells you is the peak year, even with the crazy ones like Jerry Rice and Larry Fitzgerald, the peak year for a wide receiver is 7.4. So now you have Julio Jones, who's getting $10 million a year. Do you go ahead and up his contract, even though he's got 3 years left on it, knowing that the statistic will say is he's never going to be that 136 catch guy again? When you get an Odell Beckham, who now is in his 5th year, he's getting close to that age as well. Do you sign him to a mega contract as well? Now, he's a little bit younger, of course, than Julio Jones, but now you're looking at, say, a Dez Bryant. It's almost inconceivable that Dez Bryant, a true number 1 wide receiver, is still unemployed. But see, this is what I believe is happening. Teams are realizing that in the way years ago it was running backs were a dime a dozen. Before that, running backs were the key. You had to have a stud running back, a Tony Dorsett, an Emmitt Smith, a Terrell Davis. You had to have a guy. But because the change in rules, where you couldn't touch a quarterback and you couldn't touch a wide receiver, made it that much easier to pass the ball, you knew one of 3 things was going to happen. You're either going to have a big completion, you're going to have an illegal contact penalty, or you're going to have a roughing the passer. So that's why teams started selling out and doing wide receivers. You got to have a guy because it's going to be a chess match. I mean, a race to score points. But the Cowboys threw a wrench into that and kind of threw it back because with the running game, with the big offensive line. See, now what you're seeing is the evolution of how the guards are now becoming as important as the tackles. It used to be guards were a dime a dozen. But now key guards are key to the situation. And you're seeing the wide receiver, that number 1, being devalued. So now teams are looking at it and saying, do we need that guy? Or do we need a core group of guys that can receive and spread the ball around? And I'm betting that that's the evolution. And if you're the Atlanta Falcons, when you look at the numbers like this, are you going to have a return on your investment? Our Cowboys have been in cap hell because they were short-sighted at looking at the data. When you have a guy like a Jay Ratcliffe, you know that, okay, he had 1 good year, now you reward him. You looked at a guy like Marion Barber, who was a part-time running back. You rewarded him with a $45 million contract, knowing that that running back with that style was not going to last for long. You rewarded a guy like Miles Austin for having 1 great year, and it ended up being that those injuries, that injury history that he had before that year, turned back up. So, if I'm Atlanta Falcons, I ain't trying to up that contract. Maybe make it incentive-based and kind of throw a couple $1 million in there, but you don't want to do a mega deal where he is the highest paid wide receiver out there. And as well as the Giants, I think that they're thinking about this as well, and that's one of the reasons why they're really hesitant about paying a king's ransom for an Odell Beckham, and as well as Dez Bryant being kind of on the outside looking in. Football is a brutal business, and it will change rapidly. So we'll see if I'm actually right or not, but I think the Cowboys have the right approach as far as wide receivers go. It's better to spend that money elsewhere, having the offensive line locked up that can protect your quarterback. If you give a quarterback 6, 7 seconds in the pocket. I don't care who he is. He's going to find a wide open receiver at some point. So, as always, guys, I'm Mark Holmes. Thank you for watching, commenting, and subscribing, and I've got some more work to do. I'll see you soon.